29 after the hour. Give us a few more seconds. Everybody's still filing in. The ushers are doing their best to get everyone seated. Can you tell I miss live theater, Rob?
I miss live everything.
My daughter just got cast in her first high school show. She's a freshman,
Congratulations.
and she got cast in the show with a lead part, which is pretty cool.
Congrats.
All right. We are coming up on Arizona time, 10:30 a.m., Rob.
Yep.
It's 30 something where everybody else is as well. So I'm going to go ahead and kick us off
Let's do it.
officially. Welcome everyone to another product chat with Pragmatic Institute. This is the webinar and podcast series where we tackle the biggest challenges facing today's product teams. I'm Eddie Gordon, courseware designer at Pragmatic Institute, and today's host. Housekeeping items at the top. If you have questions, and I know that you will, if you've got questions, a couple things you can do with them. Ideally, you would stick them in the Q&A. If you look down at the bottom of your screen on that toolbar, you will see a button that says Q&A. Stick your questions in there. I will see them and toss them over to our presenter. There's also, as you know, anyone that's been on Zoom recently knows there is a chat button. You can use the chat button. Go ahead. I would use it mostly if you want to just make general comments to the audience, talk amongst yourselves. We're perfectly cool with that as well. I'll monitor that as best I can. If you have a question specifically for the presenter, if you stick it in the Q&A, then I'll be guaranteed to see it and toss it over to the presenter. So there you go. Chat, Q&A, two different functions in the webinar version of Zoom. Have at it and do that. Importantly, there will be a recording of the whole presentation available to everybody that's registered today. We'll send it to you. We'll just send it to you if you've registered. So you can put down your pencils. Don't worry about taking notes. Just listen up. You'll get the whole thing to refer back to in the future. And then one last housekeeping note. If you have not yet been to the Pragmatic Alumni Community, that's our online community specifically for product professionals. If you've not checked that out yet, you are missing out. And what in the world are you doing with your time? That is the resource for online communication tools, networking for the product professional world. And you are automatically a member of the pack, as the cool kids call it, if you've taken a Pragmatic Institute course. So there's a good chance you may be a member and you didn't even know it yet. But go check it out. Get more information at pragmaticinstitute.com/community. And with that, it is time to introduce our presenter for the day. There you go. Pragmatic Alumni Community is up on the screen just briefly. Enough about us. Let's talk about Rob Jensen. Rob Jensen, today's presenter, he is the VP of Marketing for Ignite, an experienced marketing professional. He specializes in facilitating customer and partner advisory boards, overseeing global awareness, lead generation, field enablement programs, a jack of all trades. This is the expert you want to be here to talk about today. Please welcome back Rob Jensen. Rob, welcome back. So good to have you.
Thanks, Eddie. Good to be back and talking to everyone. Nice to be here. Thanks for having me.
And Rob, you're going to make us smart again today about customer advisory boards. Yes. Specifically being a member of a customer advisory board.
So we're talking, I've presented and written about customer advisory boards throughout my career and been with Ignite for about 6-7 years now. And today we wanted to focus on a little bit about what's in it for moi? What's in it for those product marketers or product managers who either have been invited to join a customer advisory board and participate in one, and or for those whose companies might have one, might be interested in starting one, might be considering starting one. And we'll get into a lot of the benefits, but specifically today, we're going to focus on how this can help you personally in your career path. So that's our focus today. So thanks again, Eddie. So the first thing we want to do today is talk about customer advisory boards versus kind of other customer engagement methods that are out there. And the reason is I talked to a bunch of product people about their customer engagement programs, and I get a lot of interesting answers, and we'll talk about that. But before we do have a poll for you out there, just to kind of get us rolling here. Just what is the status of your current customer advisory board program? So your options are: you don't have one, haven't started yet, you're trying to launch one, but the coronavirus is delayed a little bit. Your existing program may even be on hold due to coronavirus. Maybe you're doing okay and you're just simply moved your meetings from in-person to virtual, or your program's unchanged, no problem, meetings taking place virtually or in progress, in person as normal. How would you qualify your CAB program? So I see we're getting answers. The answers are coming in, kind of spread out here. Good. Okay. Has everyone cast their vote? So it looks like the top one is people don't have a program, haven't started it yet, maybe considering it, want to know how to do it, what's involved. So that's good. You're in the right place. Of course, there's others that have had, hey, they've had meetings and they're just going to virtual for the foreseeable future, which is common with a lot of our clients. So we can, if you're looking at those results, so there they are. I think I'm sharing them now. So you can see most of you here don't have a program, haven't started, but considering. All right, thanks, Callie. With that, I think we can move on to the next, next content. All right, great. So talk number one is, let's talk about customer engagement programs that are out there, right? And again, I do talk to a lot of product managers and marketers, say, hey, what are you doing? Well, first of all, are you engaging their customers? And I say, and they almost inevitably say, yeah, of course we are. And I say, great, how are you doing that? And I get a lot of a range of answers, and sometimes some very interesting answers. So one of the top engagement programs out there is that companies will say, yeah, our salespeople interact, relationship managers, they interact with our customers, which is great. You leverage your existing sales team, but the guidance you're getting can be, ad hoc, hit and miss, complaints. And the people that are in these meetings, your customers, they think this is a sales engagement. So every question is gauged with, how's this guy trying to sell me, right? And even the people asking the questions are kind of fishing for how they can get add-on engagement. So that's kind of how that interaction goes. And it's a very common one, maybe one of the top ones I hear. Some companies do invest in customer satisfaction, NPS or CSAT, which is formal, comprehensive. It's a good program. But it can be expensive and resource intensive, and there's no face-to-face engagement, right? You're just basically asking customers, hey, would you recommend us? And they say yes or no, right? Or to what degree. You may not be getting a lot of background as to why. Some companies do surveys, hey, which is fast and expensive these days, but there too, you're getting tactical input, maybe just complaints, right? The squeaky wheels. And these days, more than ever, it's low participation, right? Everyone gets surveys, a lot of people get these, and there's certainly, your executives certainly aren't filling them out. It's usually your users, right? Speaking of users, a lot of companies do have user group meetings, which is great. You get a large group of your users together, but it's almost exclusively one-way communication, and there's minimal opportunity for deeper discussions. You're basically saying, hey, here's our roadmap, and here's what we're doing, and what do you guys think? And you may or may not get a lot of strategic input. It's more tactical. Some people have moved their engagement to social media, right? LinkedIn groups, but these have been pretty universally disappointing as far as getting input, getting your customers to participate. Even some of the biggest companies we work with and some we don't work with, a big complaint is, hey, our customers just don't participate in them. And they certainly don't share, strategic guidance. It's more like, little tactical things. Some companies, it's informal, ad hoc, right? You don't have to do anything and just wait for your customers to maybe contact you with a complaint. So again, you're making actions based on squeaky wheels, and companies have and will, certainly in my experience, will take action, big strategic changes in direction based on one single data point. Like one guy says something, oh, we should change it. Well, is that which may or may not work very well. And then some companies just don't really have a customer engagement strategy, which is great. You don't have to do anything, but you can really misfire on product and marketing execution, and you're missing strategic opportunities. So again, some of the most common engagement mediums there. What companies really want is they want to gain their, they want to validate their roadmap. They want to co-innovate with clients and create a trusted network, right, to help provide, not only product roadmap feature enhancements, but a range and a more wider strategic input. The people that want to do this and can do this, the decision makers and influencers, they, on the other hand, are overwhelmed with information. They probably manage a lot of different things besides your product, right? They're inundated with invitations on a range of things from various companies and vendors. And they too are skeptical of overt sales pitches, right? Because a lot of companies, customer engagement is about sales opportunities. So sometimes executives can be skeptical of this. But they are interested and available for strategic engagement, right? They love to talk and benchmark against peers, right? How's this other company doing this? They like to provide and share strategic guidance with small growing companies. Who doesn't like to do that, right? They're also drawn to kind of prestigious engagement programs and boards, right? Boards is a magic word where, wow, this is great. This will look good on my LinkedIn page or that kind of thing. They have less bandwidth for tactical things, right? Surveys, tweeting, product reviews, blogs, likes and shares. Strategic guys, they don't have, and men and women, they don't have time for that, guys, for many of the engagement programs. But so executives and will participate in programs that support their own companies and their own personal brand, and we'll get into that a bit shortly. Companies that are doing this very well and engaging customers are doing so through customer advisory boards, which some of you may know. It's a panel of leaders from key customer organizations who work with your company's senior leadership to guide strategy and offerings and address shared industry challenges, right? It's not just about your product, it's about shared industry challenges, right? Customer advisory boards can certainly benefit your organization in a number of ways. The top one, obviously, for this group is to help input and prioritize your product roadmap, discover new product and service categories that maybe you haven't thought of, or leaving money on the table, new customer segments, right? This happens all the time, that your product can help other people in other areas you didn't even know about. You can leverage emerging industry trends, uncover competitive opportunities. This happens all the time, right? Hey, your competitor is contacting me with this offer. And the host customer's like, wow, we didn't even know that. Companies to acquire M&A opportunities happen all the time, especially partnerships, right? Integration partners, other technology vendors that integrate with your solution, other reseller channels, and what not to do. Stop doing that is something a lot of companies learn from their customer advisory board. So a lot of benefits there. Another one is that customer advisory boards impact revenue, and there's now several studies that show that, right? One was done by Oracle that shows, purchasing and willing to recommend and overall satisfaction is higher, much higher for customer advisory board companies who participate on customer advisory boards above those who don't participate. Companies who host a customer advisory board versus those who don't host a customer advisory board, right? My agency also did a survey where we discovered, retention rate and new business increases. And a Canadian study was really fantastic that showed, huge numbers of sales growing over time with companies who host customer advisory boards over those who don't. So we have links to a lot of this on our website if you're interested in some of the data, right? If you want to show your execs, get some numbers behind it. And what kind of the why behind satisfaction and loyalty, there's some psychology here, right? You bring your members into your company's inner circle and they provide input to you, and they become professionally, emotionally invested in your success, right? They're telling you what to do and you do it. They're now kind of linked to you. Their enthusiasm and passion kind of permeates now within their team and within their own company and beyond. And that makes them less likely to defect. Right? If there's a little problem, they're not just going to jump ship. They're going to work with you through that much more eagerly, right? And then, finally, customer advisory boards can be used to help market your company, right? These Customer advisory board members are clients, are advocates for references, and you can publish research from your advisory board discussions, right? Benchmarks, case studies, white papers, and you can use your customer advisory board members for analyst interviews or for references or for sales kickoffs. This happens all the time in my experience. Lastly, and I'll pause after this, but we did a survey many years ago to kind of confirm what we were hearing from our customers about the value that CABs provide host companies. And product direction, branding and positioning insight, and increased loyalty were at the top. The takeaway here is at the bottom, the least valuable aspect of a customer advisory board was sales references, right? Customer advisory boards are not trapping your customers in a room and give them your demo and they're trapped and you're going to get more sales. That's not what a customer advisory board is about. Although some people think that's what they're about, especially your sales group, but that's not what they're about. So I've been kind of going on here, and maybe I'll pause, Eddie. I don't know if there's any questions so far or any thoughts or observations?
Just some comments. We did have one question looking for, do you have a reference or link for the Oracle study?
I believe that's on our website, and that's on our website. And if you go there and look for it, you can't find it, let me know. That was a study that was done a while back, and we've used that data often, but we do link to the Canadian one, which is certainly more recent and maybe a little bit more impressive than that one. So check that out on our resources page.
Good. There you go, David. That was for you who asked the question.
Okay.
That's it. Other than that, just some general agreement. Looks like some other people have experienced some of the similar things that you've described with customer advisory boards, manufacturing, as Cantina calls it, satisfaction and stickiness.
Yes. And I just kind of covered the normal common ways that companies typically engage customer advisory boards. And as we were talking before with Callie, I didn't even cover some of the bizarre answers we get for customer advisory board engagement. I wrote a whole blog about, companies will say, yeah, our engineers engage with our customers. And then I said, oh, great, how's that going? Oh, I don't know. You don't know what your customers are saying about your product? And I don't know, just kind of very interesting answers we'll get. Or our CIO picks the members, or it's a junket, we all go to the Bahamas, and it's just very bizarre answers that some people think, yeah, we have customer engagement covered with very interesting programs, and I wrote a whole blog about that. Okay, but now let's talk about you guys, right? How can customer advisory boards, it's all well and good to help your company, right? Okay, but how does this help you personally in your career, right? Let's get to the nitty gritty here. Okay, so for you product marketers and product marketing managers that either have a program or considering starting a program, this can help your career, right? So if you are lucky enough to participate in the meeting itself, you get to showcase your skills and knowledge to executives from your best customers, right? You can illustrate successful, innovative applications and implementations of your product, show how your product can be used in the right way and in new ways and novel ways, and your customers can be very impressed with you, right? But more importantly, you'll get noticed by the host company executives from your own company who are presenting in the meeting with you or participating in the meeting, right? They may not really know you or aware of your importance and talents. I mean, I remember, a couple meetings I was in that, our CEO said, wow, who is that guy? I didn't know him. He's great. That's happened a few times, and those guys tend to stick around and do well. You get noticed, elevate your profile. And in participating, you get to learn new and previously unknown customer challenges, right? Like, wow, I didn't know that they were having challenges here or struggling with this, or that's a problem. You get to, you'll develop potential solutions or workarounds or changes that can address these, and you'll then create more revenue for your company, which gets attributed to you because you heard this and made a change, and now that they fixed it and they renewed, and that can go to you, right? And then lastly, you can get hired by the customer advisory board member companies themselves, right? This has happened a couple of times too in my experience. So, the product manager presents something, and the customer advisory board companies are like, wow, that's pretty awesome. This guy's great. We need a guy like that. We have that same problem. We have a problem over here. And the customer advisory board companies actually hire host company product managers sometimes, often at a higher level and salary. So it's you're putting yourself, it's a big advertisement for yourself in front of the members. So a couple examples here. One product manager was in a customer advisory board. He regularly presented over time, and not only so he impressed his executives, and he was actually promoted to oversee the department, the development department, when the head guy left, and the product manager was promoted to do that, in part because of his participation in the customer advisory board. Another product manager I was working with, he uncovered some new product applications as a result of the customer advisory board. They launched he was tasked with developing and launching kind of this new product for a different application. And the product was successful, and he was promoted to oversee the entire product line and the revenue for that product. So it was a whole new revenue stream for these guys that this product manager was put in charge of as a result of the input from the customer advisory board. So that was really great for him. And then lastly, a third example was there's this product manager, product guy who presented and impressed at customer advisory board meetings. He communicated a lot of incremental value and capabilities of the product and technologies, and leveraging not only his own technology, but others that were available. And he was hired by one of the customer advisory board companies to help implement a lot of the changes he was talking about, capabilities company-wide. So this happens. I've seen it. It happens, pretty regularly. And this is really great for product managers and product marketers who participate in customer advisory boards. There's some really great career opportunities. There's also benefit for actually participating on a customer advisory board. And some technology people, they might be invited to join a customer advisory board. They may not be sure, do I want to do this? Is it worth it? What do I get out of it? So here's the top 10. It was written in CIO Insight for CIOs who were invited to join a customer advisory board, which they sometimes do. Really quickly, you get to influence your vendor product and solutions roadmap. In other words, you tell your vendor to make it perfect for you to work great and to meet your needs. You acquire best practices and learn against peers, right? So other companies and other industries who have the same challenge, what are they doing? How are they getting around this? And you'll really learn what they're doing successfully and be able to apply that to your own company. This is almost every meeting I'm in is that's a benefit. You get to, you obtain insight from your host company's strategic initiatives. What are they doing? You have the opportunity to beta test products, right? So if a company's launching something, you can test it. You'll be the first, you'll be offered to test it for the first time and make changes that, help your company the best. You interact with executive management teams from the host company and others. You can improve customer service and support, right? This is pretty common too, because it's actually kind of low-hanging fruit for companies to improve their service and support. Kind of little things, little tweaks, right? Have really gone over well with customer advisory boards. You learn about more general industry trends that are impacting your colleagues, but also coming down the road, right? That you may not know of. We're so focused every day and heads down on what we're doing, we might not be able to look up to see what's coming. You might work with your fellow cab members to help solve a business challenge that we're all facing, right? Could be, IT security. Everybody knows that's a huge challenge in an industry unto itself. But everyone working together to try to come up with a solution here, and then you come up with a really cool aspect, and then you publish that, right? That's a big benefit, not only your company, but then to go to number 10 here is then you're publishing, number 9 here, you're publishing thought leadership. And now we're getting into, potential personal and professional growth, right? This is now helping you to come up with these novel solutions. So here's a couple examples from what I've seen from customer advisory board members impacting their career, right? So there was this, I was involved with this security technology company, and there was this one guy who was a longtime customer advisory board member. So he established all these relationships. And then another customer advisory board company on the cab acquired another company. And we know for tech people, M&A and acquisitions happen constantly, right? So this other cab member was hired to integrate and run this acquired division because he had more specific knowledge in this one realm, and integrations are always a challenge understatement. And so the company needed help with that. And they had acquired another cab member. They hired another cab member, I should say. A second example that happened recently for me was there was a major university. He was a financial executive on this bank's customer advisory board. And he not only was a fantastic member, but he presented at the customer advisory board his innovative kind of payment application, how they were using the bank's technology for some really, really cool and kind of out of the box services and capabilities. And the bank hired him within the bank to roll out this application to the bank's customers nationwide. And he's still there. He's a super great guy. And he was hired from the customer advisory board to the host company. So that worked out really well. So there's just a couple examples of, how serving on a customer advisory board can help your career. What do you think, Eddie?
This is fascinating, Rob. We did have an interesting question come up in the Q&A from Charlie. Charlie's asking, have you seen any difference in the acceptance of CAB programs internationally? In other words, does culture make any difference on how difficult it is to implement one of these?
Yeah, I have to admit that being an American, most of the companies I've been with have been very US, North America focused. However, many companies do roll out customer advisory board programs internationally, right? So I ran an international customer advisory board that was for Europe. Another company ran it. They had North America, Europe, and Asia Pacific. So the good news is that many of these concepts all completely apply internationally. What executive doesn't want to get these benefits and learn and help their career and help their companies? So that all works really well. The challenge can be is sometimes internationally people have different ideas, they have different resources, they might have more resource limitations. And as we know in Europe, countries do things differently. They might kind of have different expectations for how this works. What language do you do it in? Where do you meet? There's other hurdles internationally that obviously for US at least, we don't have, but it can be done. And again, I've gone to England and run a customer advisory board for an international group, and it worked very well. There's other challenges to overcome, but all these lessons and benefits do apply.
Fascinating. No specific place then where the people because of the culture may be hesitant to participate because they just see it for what it is, which is an attempt to improve someone else's business, or they just don't think there's enough in it for them. No issues like that anywhere, specifically related to culture. I mean, we would deal with those any place, I'm sure.
Sure. There is one interesting aspect for that, Eddie, is in the Asia Pacific, there was a tendency for those participants to not want to criticize, right? It's kind of a cultural thing. You don't want to criticize. So there was a bit of messaging around for host companies to be transparent and there's kind of two aspects. One is a host company needs to be honest and transparent and open the kimono to their challenges and problems. Some companies don't want to do that. They want to tell their customers, everything's great, we have it under control, we know what we're doing, and that's kind of how they roll. And they either don't have a customer advisory board, they don't want to know, or they do it and it's less beneficial. And then there's the members who sometimes, and again, this happened a little bit in Asia, there was a hesitancy to kind of be more open and critical and kind of be perceived as negative, right? But there too, it takes a little messaging. Hey, we're here to do that. We're here to be honest. Put your, your manners and everything kind of aside, and let's get real and honest. And this is a place to do that. That one even had it was around Asia Pacific, and we had translators in different languages and stuff. So it was really fascinating. But that was one area to, you want to make an environment where people can be honest with their likes and their dislikes and their suggestions for improvement.
And Rob, I know we saved plenty of time for Q&A at the end, but Zoe did have a question in the chat related to what we're talking about now. Zoe says, can I ask a question about who to invite to a cab? What if a large segment of my customers are government are they allowed to participate? So we've been talking internationally. Obviously, there's a
Yeah.
whole can of worms there if you're talking internationally, but what about inviting government members into your cab? Any specific
Great
rules to
question.
be aware of there?
So the great question. So the answer is yes, of course. Many government entities do have customer advisory boards, and if you Google it, you can see they send out press releases about customer advisory boards, and they do have them. Government hosts them. They participate on them, and so it completely applies to them. Now the flip side of that is that a lot of governments, they do have rules about how they're able to take their participation. And this doesn't apply just to government. So for example, let's say, if you're paying for travel or hotel, most companies don't have a problem with that because the host company, let's say, well, hey, we'll cover there's no cost to participate on a customer advisory board, and we don't want you to have to spend any money. So we'll pay for your hotel and your flight to come to our customer advisory board meeting in person, obviously. Let's say it's in Houston or something. So a lot of companies say, yeah, that's great. They're just paying my costs. Some companies, however, do have restrictions on that, and they're only allowed to take gifts up to a certain amount, like maybe up to $100. They might pay for it themselves. So some government entities would be that way too. They might have rules around what they're able to accept as compensation for travel. And also, some companies will also give like a kind of a thank you gift. They're inexpensive. They're focused on a meeting. We have other blogs on this, but some companies are not able to. You have to keep it inexpensive, like let's say under $100. And most companies and government entities can take it under things under a certain limit. You can't do it thousands and thousands of dollars, obviously. So that applies to government. Some may not have a problem with it, and then others applies to big companies too, especially like in the defense industry. There's a lot of rules there, and so there could be some sensitivities there that you can work around.
And obviously, it would be disastrous if you got someone in trouble who was volunteering to be on your cab. So the responsibility would fall to you to be aware of all of these rules as you invite.
Well, sure. I mean, hopefully the person knows the rules too. So, for example, let's say you're inviting, a government entity. They probably have rules. Oh, we can only accept, compensation or reimbursement for travel up to a certain amount, $200. I don't even know what the amounts are, right? And so you can either work within those boundaries, or the member might say, I'll just pay for my own flight and my own this, and I can't accept the gift. And you kind of work together on it. You're being transparent. There's no secrets, or there's no keeping things under the table. I've never experienced that. There's none of that. There's no need for it. Keep it all on the level.
Yeah.
And by the way, I've never experienced a problem with any of this ever either. There's kind of two concerns everyone always has. One is, the biggest one is, well, there's this one, right? Getting in trouble for some sort of spend or something. That's never happened in my career, right? The other thing that everyone's concerned about is like non-disclosure and communicating sensitive information to customers, and we don't want this to fall on competitors' hands. That's always a big concern. I've written about non-disclosure agreements. This issue of sensitive information falling on enemy and competitor hands has never happened, never been an issue, never been a problem. Easy workarounds. Never had a problem with it.
Beautiful. That's comforting.
Good. Yeah. In fact, I actually wrote, sometimes one of the restrictions sometimes we'll get is around our lawyer legal has challenges and questions here, and legal people they want to very risk averse, to say understatement. I wrote a blog on this for how to communicate to your lawyer about starting your customer advisory board.
What can we find that someplace?
Yeah, it's on our website. It's on Uncapped. I'm sorry. It's on Ignite website under resources and blogs, under blogs.
Very cool. How to talk to a lawyer about your cab. That's
awesome.
Awesome.
Me and lawyers and marketers, we go way back. That's a whole other webinar. Okay. So for those that are interested in considering like, hey, this sounds great. I'd like to pursue, maybe, advocating, starting a customer advisory board. Here's 5 keys to success. But before we get into that, let's get to our second poll. Callie, if you're there, we can pull up our second poll. We want to go ahead and get, what's your biggest challenge, that you're facing, or you think you might face in initiating a customer advisory board program. And while we originally thought, oh, select all that apply, because many companies have many challenges here, pick the number one, right? The biggest one, right? Is it building a case, a business case? Is it obtaining the necessary resources, right? Personnel, bandwidth, time, budget. Is it getting executive sponsorship, right? Sometimes companies, execs will say, yeah, go start it. Good luck with that. Let me know how it turns out. If you fail, it's on you. If it succeeds, we're all in this. Great. Recruiting, right? Recruiting senior level customers, creating a compelling agenda, strategic agenda, keeping members engaged between meetings, turning insights from board members into actions. You get all this great insight. Now what? Measuring the impact and ROI of your customer advisory board, right? What's your biggest challenge? So the votes are coming in.
It is neck and neck between two of them there, Rob.
I know, I'm looking at the results, which I think we'll publish, but it's a nice spread. It's like all of them. Some companies might think all the above. And, these are in doing our own polls and engagement. These are the ones that we've encountered the most. So I'm going to share the results with everybody. And the winner is, do we have a tie, Ed? The top
37 to 37.
That's right. So the top 2 challenges, a tie for first. Obtaining the necessary resources, right? Personnel, bandwidth, time, budget. That's a top one. Time's a personal one, because some companies will come to us and say, yeah, we want to have a customer advisory board. We want it next month. Can you guys make that happen? You need a little more time than that, which sounds like some people here can relate to that. And then creating a compelling and strategic agenda, which you don't want to get in a room with, hey, okay, here's all about us. Here's our IR presentation. Here's our product roadmap. And here's, a demo, and customers sit there and nod their heads. Great. This could have been a webinar. Why did I travel to this? You want to create a strategic agenda, and there's ways to do that. And I'll actually talk about that a little bit, but it's a nice spread here. A lot of results. So very, very cool.
Rob, just looking at those responses, we picked the top 2 that had tied, but it is so evenly divided amongst all of the problems. This functions more to me as a list of problems that people would have in getting their CAB program started. And there are a lot of them, and they are varied, which I think is telling that this is something people want to do, but struggle to get implemented.
Yes. And these are actually also challenges that companies come to us with. They say, we have a program, it's not going well, and these are the reasons why. And we, in addition to starting programs, we also help companies fix a struggling program, or a program that went dormant because people were unclear of the value. And we had one, we're not sure how it went, which is a common refrain. So these are the top challenges, and it sounds like some people here are facing them as well. So if you're going to have a customer advisory board, top 5 things you need to do, right? Invest in preparation, right? Know that you're going to want to address topics that the members want to cover, not necessarily that your company wants to cover. How do you do that? One way to do that is to interview your customers and talk to them, engage with them, and look at your previous meetings and surveys, and they're going to tell you they know what they want to talk about. They'll tell you what you want to talk about, what they want to talk about, but you have to engage them, right? Get a lineup of engaging session leaders, not just your CEO and the product team. Get people who are knowledgeable on their topic, but are good session leaders. Review the meeting materials. Don't just show up and assume everyone has the latest, and that's what we want to communicate. Practice, rehearse with everyone that's going to be there should see everything, right? And then if you're having a virtual meeting, test the virtual meeting technology. We've all been to meetings where the technology doesn't work, or we've all been there. That's a whole other different webinar of everything that, test in advance. And there's a whole process for preparing for a customer advisory board meeting. It's kind of here on the bottom right, all the different steps to take. And we can advise, the details on how to do that for those who are interested. Second thing is plan for engagement. Communicate, why are you addressing this topic? What are you trying to get out of it? What are you trying to learn from members? Most companies would never put the questions or what are we trying to learn? They just, hey, I'm Rob, here we go. And they just start presenting, right? Why are we doing this? Why are we covering this? Again, convey the questions. Here's what I want to answer. Here's what I'm looking for from you guys, right? And then design the sessions to elicit responses, right? Leverage the meeting technology, so video. There's other things too, active cursor, highlight, circle, polling questions, voting, chat box, raise hands, spending dollars, all different kinds of games you can do to get people engaged to answer a question that you need answered, right? So on the other side, in other words, do not present canned PowerPoint presentations, right? Don't present your IR presentation that's on your website and recorded. That's happened. Don't provide an abundance of updates. All right, here's what we're doing the whole meeting, right? Here's an update on what we told you last time. That's not very engaging. That can be a webinar, right? Especially if you have third-party people who just, analysts or speakers that just present their thing for an hour. Don't bring them to the customer advisory board if that just could have been a webinar for all your customers, right? Don't give product demos or just trap people or sales pitches. That's not what this is about. A lot, your salespeople might be salivating to get your customers in a room and lock them in and, give your sales pitch, but that's not what it's about. Don't make it a one-way webinar or a one-way presentation. In other words, that's kind of the kiss of death for a customer advisory board meetings, right? A third thing to consider is to maybe increase frequency, right? Sometimes if you start a for younger customer advisory boards, you have so much you want to learn and you want to do. And, maybe are you trying to do too much if you have a full agenda and you need to gather a lot of input and feedback and you're thinking you need a lot of time? This really applies more for, virtual. Sometimes our client members doing virtual meetings, they've gotten a little long and it's harder for virtual to keep, attention of executives who have other things to do and they're in their office and they're getting email and chatting. So, if you're doing a virtual meeting, maybe keep it to, 1.5, 2 hours tops. You can break them into shorter engagements, right? Maybe plan a series during the outbreak when people are, virtual, maybe do it, quarterly. A lot of companies are having success with doing quarterly meetings as opposed to like 1 or 2 long ones in person, at least during the pandemic, which is still going on. Great. So this might be in place for a while. So consider increasing the frequency if you have a lot of things to do. And then use a skilled facilitator. A lot of companies want to, think they're going to do this themselves and they start out doing so, and then the meeting's not going well. And someone from their own company is a facilitator. This happened to me, and I was a facilitator young in my career, and I kind of didn't know what I was doing, and all my bosses were there. And not only was I nervous, but I, for one, certainly was not going to cut off my CEO who was going over time. That's a career limiting decision, right? Whereas if you have a skilled third-party facilitator, they'll establish the participation guidelines, make sure everyone's heard and everyone understands how they participate. Sometimes they can clear up bottlenecks and keep the meeting on track and on time and make sure that you're getting the outcomes that are desired, right? Because CAB meeting killers can be people are not sure how to participate. It can be, again, boring in one way. I'm going to drive that one home. Minimal discussion, nothing learned, right? People nodding their heads. Great, we done. All right, thanks. Third-party facilitators are skilled and experienced and trained. There's a perceived kind of neutrality, right? There's kind of the referee to make sure everything's, going well. And they're not just here to serve the host company. They're there to make sure that the members are heard as well. And it also shows, wow, the company's dedicated. They're investing in this meeting. They're dedicated to this program, and it just ensures an optimal experience, right? And then lastly, tip number 5 is to communicate outcomes, right? So at the end of sessions in your meeting, did you achieve what you wanted to achieve? Were your questions answered, right? Did you answer them? You're going to want to communicate what you discuss, right? Just don't have a meeting and then what? Nothing. Put together a virtual meeting report, summarize discussions, what you heard, the feedback and suggestions, and then potential company actions, right? So after a meeting, your company sometimes we say you're just getting started after the meeting happens, right? All the work to put together the meeting was a lot of work, was great. but now you're just getting started with, now you have all this input, now what? You're going to want to put together an action plan, review all the actions heard, prioritize them with stakeholders, assign leads and timelines. All right, so Eddie, you're going to do this. You'll have this done by the end of Q4, right? Yes. Okay, great. Go do it. And then you're going to communicate back to members. Okay, last time we heard this action, Eddie did it. Here it is. Here's what changed. And then members will be like, wow, they heard me. They did stuff. This is great. Whereas the opposite is, whatever happened with that, Eddie? We talked about that last June. Whatever happened with that? Why are we asking this again, right? If you're talking about a topic that someone already gave an answer to and you're not addressed and you're not showing that you did something, members will get frustrated and leave your program if they don't feel they're being heard or you're not doing anything, right? So about their input. And you want to provide subsequent progress updates. Here's everything we did and here's the status. Maybe not everything was done, right? But here's where it is on the program, or the product roadmap or the timeline. That's okay. You don't have to do everything they say. That's a misunderstanding sometimes too, is you can select what you're going to do, maybe do the top 5 or top 10 and get back to customers with what you've done, right? So those are the top 5. Any thoughts or questions from your end, Eddie?
Oh, we've got some good ones coming into the Q&A now. Do you want to do that now, or do you want to do your next step and then we can do all the Q&A all at once here?
Good question. Good point. Let's do that. So for anyone who's like, this is interesting, I'd like to learn more. If you go to Ignite Advisory Group, so igniteag.com, we have lots of resources, many more deep dives on some of the topics I've hit on a very high level, right? I mentioned my blog. I've blogged about a lot of these things. We have videos, we have webinars like this one, we have them recorded. We have ebooks, we have a quarterly newsletter where we collect all the articles and things about customer advisory boards that you can sign up for. We have podcasts. So we have a bunch of resources and things. You can learn a lot more and see articles that have been written on all these topics and more about anything customer advisory boards. So go check that out. And of course, you're more than welcome to just contact us, call, drop an email. If you have a program and you're interested in a specific consultation on your program, on your challenge, we're happy to talk to you about that and provide some guidance and some ideas for you as well. All right, Eddie. So with that, I think we're ready for Q&A.
Absolutely. And then because Callie is very helpful, she has posted a link to your blog right in the chat. So we were talking about one specific one earlier. Scroll up a little bit in the chat, about 5 messages or so, folks, and you'll see a link that goes over there to the ignite.com blog page. And we're going to do, you probably saw a quick poll pop up right here at the beginning of the Q&A. That one is for our benefit, Pragmatic Institute. This is where you tell us how useful this was, what we can do better so that we can make these sessions even more useful for you. This is our little user group session right here, Rob.
Nice. I like the second question. Talk about immediate feedback. Question 2. Wow. Well, at least there's no.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
Immediate feedback. And man, if that doesn't put a little pressure on you, Rob, oh my goodness. Lucky for you, valuable is the dominating answer on that one. What would you do if it wasn't? I don't know.
I like it.
I'm out of here and walk out. That's all right. Congratulations, Rob. You are valuable.
I'm glad. At least I didn't get any not valuables. That would have hurt my feelings, you guys.
We've got plenty of cool questions coming into the chat, Rob. I'm going to toss some over to you. Here's one that I saw from a couple people. This question is worded, you mentioned executive leadership from the customer organizations as participating in the CAB. Is there a separate opportunity or process to talk with end users? Or in other words, Rob, is there a difference between a CAB and a user group?
Yes.
What is that?
Yes. So the idea here, guys, is you do want to be specific. You never want to have a mix, right? You don't want, well, we have some executives and some users on our customer advisory board. That's generally not good. You want to focus on one or the other, and typically you're going to get more strategic value from executives as opposed to users. In fact, some of the customer advisory boards I'm involved with, the executives are not product users, and they don't even know some of the nitty gritty of the product use. And that's a good thing. That's okay, right? Because from a strategic, you want to, if you're going to invest in a customer advisory board, you want strategic executives. If you want to engage in your tactical product users, you can have a customer advisory board and you can have a board full of users, which can work as well, but you don't want to have a mix. You want to focus and specify which group you're going after. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It's a completely different kind of information that you're gathering here. So in some of the Pragmatic Institute courses, we'll talk a lot about going to the user, watching how they use the product, making observations as part of the design process. This is completely different. A CAB gives you different information that you can use and adapt with.
Right.
Here's another question that came into the Q&A from Jacques. Jacques says, can you comment on the pros and cons of a virtual versus an in-person meeting for cabs? What would the process be like? Do you get different kinds of information in the different venues?
Yeah, that's a, gosh, great question, Jacques. And I can tell you, because of the way the world has been with the pandemic over the last year and a half, is almost all meetings have been virtual, and we've done many. We've all gotten better at them. But I would say this, nothing beats in person. A virtual meeting is never as good as in person. In person's where there's so many more personal connections. You can see body language, you're learning, you're engaging more. It's not just a meeting, there's social activities. So I would answer the question to say, if you can do in person, and gosh, I hope we're going to get to do that soon. In person's the best. You'll be happiest. Your customers will be happiest. Your executives will be happiest with an in-person meeting. Virtual can work too, especially in this day and age. It's not as good, but there's many of the same concepts apply, and it's kind of even more important to use a facilitator and prepare and get the topics and just practice and test the technologies. So virtual works too, but it's never as good as in person. In person's the best. The best.
It is the best, but of course you have to justify the travel expense. You have to justify them coming there live, so that you're not having to say why wasn't this just a webinar.
For meetings, for meetings that are well planned and well prepared, you never get like, this could have been a webinar. You never get that. I certainly did not. Certainly before the COVID, no one said. I think said another way, I've always been, even before I started working with Ignite, been pleasantly surprised that how valuable people love customer advisory boards, how the survey results are fantastic, how host company executives say, this was great. I love this. Let's do this again. It's really great. The power of customer advisory boards, people really, really like them. Yeah. I think anyone who participates in them and does them well will be pleasantly surprised with how well it goes too.
Yeah, and Rob, from that previous poll that we took, it looked like the majority of the audience knows that they need to do these, but are just having trouble getting it off the ground, getting it implemented for the first time. So we've got lots of questions about sort of the basics of how do you get it started, how many people, what's the frequency? For instance, Peter says, what's the best frequency to keep CAB members engaged? Is it quarterly, typically, or do you succeed with more or less monthly? How often do you have these?
These are all great questions, and we do have all the answers. Well, we have numbers some numbers that can really help. So, for example, how often to meet is a question we get all the time. So back in the pre-pandemic days when we were meeting in person, companies would have in-person meetings either once or twice a year. I think twice a year in person works best. Once a year, it's a long time between meetings, but the best thing would be to meet in person twice a year, and then you have what we call interim strategy calls, where you do engage with your customers virtually, right, online on a webinar, maybe in between meetings, to not just show progress on the input you took or updates or things that you said you would follow up with, but it's also to put together, you're talking about a strategic topic, right, that they want to talk about. So the best would be quarterly, twice in person and then twice virtually, right? That's best, right? And I was thinking about one of the other answers I got once is, oh, how many, do you have a customer? Yes, we do have a customer advisory board. Great. How many people are on your customer advisory board? Oh, we have 80 people on our customer advisory board. Yeah, that's not a customer advisory board. That's a user group. And so 80 people is not good. The ideal, we have a magic number. The magic number for getting people in your customers in a room is 12. That's your best dozen, right? And then you have about half that number from your host company, right? So if you get 12 members, 6 members from your company, and so for a total of my marketing math, I think that's 18. That's the ideal magic number. You don't want to have more company people than customers, right? You don't want to have people sitting in the back to just listen. I'm just going to listen and learn, or all the salespeople show up. No, you don't want to do that, right? So there's a bunch of guidance we can provide on some of the data here.
Brilliant. And that was a question in the chat. Actually, somebody's asking, how many should we
Yeah.
have? This is not a conference,
Yes, I
not a
did get that.
seminar. We're not
Yeah,
inviting people to.
yeah.
I
12
need to
best.
point out another a really cool suggestion from Brian in the chat. He says to minimize travel, you can schedule your CAD meetings to coincide with significant trade shows in your industry because lots of those folks are going to be there in town anyway. Just find a gap in the schedule and invite them over as
Yeah.
to the CAD meeting as well.
I've been with companies that have done that and have discovered there's kind of pros and cons. The pros is, hey, everyone's traveling there anyway. Your own execs are traveling there. Everyone's there. They're at a specific location. That's great. The downside for that is, let's say you're at a conference and we've all been to conferences. And then if you add on a customer advisory board on the third day, man, people can be burnt out. They're tired. They want to go home. They've been out of the office a long time. They're getting behind. You might get people that are kind of mailing it in and kind of they're kind of tired. So if someone is my guidance is that's a great idea that sometimes in practice doesn't work well, especially if you have your own executives kind of coming in and out and not really focused, or someone representing in the customer advisory board what they presented at their conference session, right? If you're thinking of doing that, do have your customer advisory board before the conference starts, right? So if the conference starts on a Wednesday, have your customer advisory board on Tuesday before everyone gets burnt out, tired, and wants to go home.
Get them while they're fresh. Otherwise, your CAD will be completely populated with type A personalities that can't say no to things.
Yeah, the other
Which
answer
is not diverse.
that we give is, a well put together customer advisory board with executives. They're going to want to come to it and travel to it on their own. Again, pros and cons for everything in life, but a well-designed customer advisory board, your members, your best executive customers will want to, they'll want to join, and B, they'll be fine with traveling to that, right? They don't need a conference to be tied to it to make it worth their time.
Right on. I've got another lawyer question in the Q&A over here. Are you ready for that?
Lay it on.
Michael says, within the realm of CAD discussions, how do you balance sharing customer insights with NDAs, non-disclosure agreements?
So that's an interesting topic. I did write a blog on this, so check it out on our website. You don't need to present secret information that's super sensitive to your customer advisory board. Now, someone might say, well, Rob, our product roadmap is by default pretty sensitive. We don't want to we wouldn't want that falling into our competitors' hands, which is completely understandable, right? So you can just tell your customers, you can have them sign NDAs. I actually, fell in a honeypot with this early in my career. With someone told me I needed to get NDAs, and so I learned that many of your customers already have NDAs when they buy your product, which I kind of learned the hard way because I was trying to get them to sign it. Some didn't want to. Some made us sign their NDA. Some didn't. They showed up for the meeting without the NDA. They said they'd go get it. They didn't. So now I'm a bouncer. Do you have your NDA? No. Oh, you're our best customer. I'm going to not let them in the room. Yeah, our sales guy and CEO would have loved that, right? That's a process unto its own. My recommendation is if your legal department says, "Hey, Rob, you're starting a CAD, you need to get NDAs," I would push that back on them. Yeah, you're the legal department. You guys go get the NDAs. I'm not a lawyer. You go get the legal documents. I'm going to make a good meeting.
Absolutely. Well, Rob, we are coming up on the hour. I just want to say to folks that we respect your time. We know you've got other meetings to get to as well. I do have one more question in the Q&A that I'm going to toss over to Rob, but if you folks need to go on to another meeting, feel free to do it. We're recording everything and we're going to send it to you, so you won't miss out on the last couple questions here. Just want to respect your time. Yours too, Rob. You got stuff to do
Yeah.
as well. You got time for one more question?
I do. And before I answer it, if anyone does have questions, they didn't get their question answered, or they have more specific questions about their own program, hey, just hit us up at Ignite Advisory Group. We'll get, we have consultants that'll talk to you about your specific program. And I'm happy to do so too. Give me a call, drop me an email. Happy to help.
Great responses to the presentation in the chat already, Rob. I'm going to toss you this last question from Cameron over here in the Q&A, who says, how do you best get equal feedback and insights from both introverts and extroverts? Or to sort of pragmatic institutionalize the question, how do you make sure you're not just hearing from the noisy 20%?
Yeah, great question. And this really does fall to a great facilitator who can kind of pull out those that are maybe a little more quiet, more reserved, and maybe kind of temper those who are the people who jump in and give an answer all the time. Falls to a great facilitator who can balance that and get insights and input from everyone. That takes some skill and experience, a little training, and but for someone who does it well, then you'll get great input from all your participating customer advisory board members.
Beautiful. Well, Rob, it is time to wrap up. I'm going to toss you one last question of my own. It's one that I like to ask the presenters at the end of the webinar, named after our director of marketing, Rebecca. We call it the RK question. She came up with this one. It goes like this: if you were to have our audience today do two things differently based on what you've been talking about, what would those two things be? Probably for most of them, they want to know, what's the next absolute thing that I need to do?
Yeah.
My cab running. But what do you think, Rob?
The two things would be, you know what, guys, customer advisory boards are not things you give it a try and let's test it. Let's dip our toe in the water. Do it, plan to do it well, or just don't do it, right? If you think your management or your budget or your personnel or your customers or you might not be able to do a customer advisory board if you don't think you can get people aligned and together, right? Sometimes the answer is just don't do it. Do it well and plan to do it well, or don't do it, because if you kind of try to do it a little bit, or it's a marketing department experiment, it can backfire. It's not only going to not work well, but your customers can say, oh my God, these guys are a disaster. Never mind, bye. Do it well or don't do it. And the other one is plan to invest the time. Again, sometimes we get, it's just really frustrating. Sometimes people think like you're thinking of doing one, you run it by your management, you finally get approval, it takes them months to approve, and you're trying to do it by your user group meeting or a time or a conference, and now that's 6 weeks away, and now your management just gave you approval on the budget and everything. It does take time to get all this together and to do it right and to do it well. And that's several months, at least 6 months in advance of an in-person meeting to do it, to do all the steps that we recommend. Faster will accelerate things, but we'll start to cut corners and water things down. So plan on some time, work in advance would be the other thing.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Well, folks, I'm sure that you have more questions because this is a huge topic and an important one. If you're watching this in the future, hello, future Eddie, you can just rewind a few slides earlier where Rob had that slide with the additional resources and contact and his website on there. Any other contact info you want to give out if folks have specific questions for you, Rob?
I would say, gosh, go to the Ignite website. There's a contact us. My colleagues are, would happily be happy to talk to any one of you. And if you want to talk to me, just kind of send that email and say, I want to talk to Rob. They'll forward it to me, and I'll be happy to talk to you as well.
All right. We know where to find you now, Rob.
Yeah.
Folks, join us for the next of our product chat series is going to be September 22nd at 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time. We will welcome Ebony Shears, Vice President of Product at Forbes. The topic will be how Forbes creates innovative leadership tactics and product approaches without the model. Tune in for that one. If you have another question in the meantime, You can always join us every Friday at 1:30 p.m. for our office hours with a Pragmatic Institute instructor. Find the links for that at the Pragmatic Institute website under the events tab. You can register for those every Friday and Ask Me Anything format. And until then, Rob, it has been an absolute pleasure having you today. Thank you
You
so
too,
much
Eddie.
for
Thanks for
your
having me. Thanks,
insight.
everyone.
What a blast. Thank you to the participation from the audience is what makes this work. Come and see us again next time. Be safe and healthy, everybody. We'll see you again next time.
Thanks, everyone.